Welcome to Taste for Adventure. We're doing autumn seasonal beers that aren't pumpkin.
Yes, yeah. As you know, autumn seasonal beers is the BJCP category that includes pumpkin beers, but there are some beers in autumn seasonal that don't have any pumpkin in them. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to give those a try today.
Yeah, we got three of them. Crown Brewing's Ignis Fatuus, Platform Candied Pecan Yammy,
Yeah.
and Dogfish Heads Costumes and Karoaoke.
Yeah, I'm excited. A couple of these are beers that I've never had or even have heard of before, and I did not sample them before the show, so I'm really excited to sort of judge them live and see what they're all about.
Yeah, well, let's get into it.
Okay. All right, so this is Crown Brewing's annual pumpkin beer, and I had heard a rumor that even though it is a pumpkin beer, it was not made with any pumpkin.
I was actually kind of wondering, like, wait a second.
Right.
Ignis Fatuus, there's a pumpkin on the can.
Right. So I did ask our friend Ashley, who works at Crown, like, hey, is this rumor true? Do you really not have pumpkin in this beer? She said, yeah, it's all just like pumpkin pie spices. There's no actual pumpkin in this beer.
Sure. This
but
would qualify for an autumn spiced beer just in the nose alone.
Yeah.
I like that quite a bit.
It has a lot of those sort of like nondescript, like sort of like mulled cider type spices. You can't, it's hard to pick out one distinct spice, but really just that like combination of, clove, allspice, nutmeg.
Well, they sell at stores. Just it's called pumpkin pie spice.
Right.
So I mean, it just could be that.
Yeah, and on another episode in the series, we break down kind of what all of those different pumpkin pie spices are. But that's also just a great place to start, is just getting that mix of pumpkin pie spices.
Yeah.
Or if you know that you really like nutmeg, get some nutmeg and a little cinnamon and try that out.
Yeah.
It does have a really nice nose of that. Beyond the cinnamon, I'm getting... It's almost like an apple turnover pastry. It's the malt is very like pastry pie crust like.
Yeah. Well, I've moved over to the tasting portion of this, and it's very. Oh, this is so nice and malty. It's got spice. It's got that the spices in it that you can definitely pick out.
It does, yeah, and you're right. There's really not a lot of hop presence either in the flavor or the bitterness.
Not that I can taste anyway.
Yeah, it really to me tastes a lot like just a really nice like an apple pumpkin turnover type thing.
Yeah. Now if I'm not mistaken, you've played around with beers where you actually will add little bits of like spices, cinnamon too. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, a really good way to try to determine if you want to brew a beer with a particular ingredient is you can pour a pretty bland beer and then just make a little, just add a little bit of something to that beer to see what it would do to it. Actually, one time somebody gave me a set of beer rimming spices, almost like your margarita type spices, and I had one that was like a cinnamon pumpkin pie spice, so you could turn any beer into it by either sprinkling it into your glass or rimming the glass. It's fun to experiment with stuff like that, especially because you can try it before you commit to brewing a full batch of beer. So, how would you describe the mouthfeel on this beer?
It's sort of similar to other beers in the autumn spiced seasonal that we've tried. It's a little... to me, it sticks a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is a little bit heavier. Yeah. It's a little bit viscous. It doesn't feel like a lot. It doesn't have a lot of that like heavy alcohol sort of flavor.
No, it doesn't.
But it does coat your tongue a little bit.
It sticks around, but without being a Russian Imperial Stout.
I would probably classify this beer as a medium full bodied beer.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely a little heavier than medium, but I wouldn't quite describe it as full like in a stout or something like that.
Right.
If nobody told me otherwise, I might think there was some pumpkin in there. I think it definitely fits within that pumpkin spice and even almost pumpkin beer category.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, it just remembering from other episodes in the series, it's got a pretty nice, amberish, yellowish, orangish hue to it, which is kind of indicative of the Marzens.
Yes, yeah, it definitely has that great fall beer color, whether you're having a Marzen Oktoberfest or a pumpkin beer. It has that really nice kind of golden amber tinge to it that really, really looks nice.
Yeah. Very nice.
I know we kind of skipped going through the appearance part, but it looks like a really nice fall pumpkin beer. Has great clarity and really nice color.
Absolutely. Crystal clear.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts, overall impression on this beer?
I really enjoyed it. I was reading the can, and it was talking about it being like pumpkin pie in a glass. And it's so amazing that there's no pumpkin in it. Because I feel it. I get those, like, that nice spiciness, that sort of, it's almost like a little warming. It's very nice beer in my estimation. But what does your score sheet say?
Really, I thought it was really, really well done, and as I've said before many times now, you really don't have to have pumpkin in a beer for it to fall into this category.
Sure.
And this even sort of pretends to be a pumpkin beer just by using the spices, and I thought they did that just tremendously well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what the ABV on this beer is, but it seems kind of right there in the middle. It's not too heavy, but it's not too light.
No, it didn't hit me over the head.
I'm not seeing just offhand what exactly this is. It says what the original gravity is, which is 1057. So I would probably assume this would finish out at, maybe a 1014 or something, but that's just a guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really cool can art. Really, really nice, unique beer from a local brewery.
Yeah.
If you're ever in Crown Point in the fall season, I recommend checking out Crown Brewing and asking for their Ignis Fatuus, or just say, I want that pumpkin beer.
Yeah, that works. So we've got platforms, Candied, Pecan Yammy. Sounds like a yam beer.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this beer. I was looking for beers to try that would fit the category but not be pumpkin.
Yeah.
And this one just really stood out to me.
Yeah.
The BJCP category talks about flavors like sweet potatoes and like pecans, and this has both in one.
Wow.
So Candied Pecan Yammy. There are some other flavors of Yammy. They had a regular one and then a s'mores one.
Oh.
As tempting as the s'mores one was, I thought for the purposes of the episode, I really wanted to try a pecan beer. So this might be the first beer I've ever had from Platform.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I've never heard of Platform. That's not really saying much when there are so many different craft breweries that really kind of come and go. I mean, craft beer as a scene is explosive.
Yeah, so it looks like they are from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And then this is one of those really cool cans that will tell you all of the ingredients that's in the beer, which I always really appreciate. So really, it's a pretty blank palette from what I can tell from the ingredients. And then it's all about the adjuncts. Pecan, brown sugar, a blend of spices, and sweet potatoes. So it seems like they maybe made kind of a blank slate beer to really showcase all these special ingredients. I can't wait to just dig into it, but I'm trying to really dig into the aroma to provide good notes before I... And that's one of the hardest things as a judge. You judge a beer on 5 categories, and flavor is number 3. So you really have to smell the beer and really look at the beer and break it down, and it really whets your appetite to get ready to dig in and taste all those flavors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it smells very sweet, almost syrupy, without smelling really sugary.
Yeah. That could be the brown sugar.
It actually very, very well could be.
So yeah, so we've got aroma.
Yeah, so I've described aroma. Why don't you kind of take us through appearance a little bit?
Appearance, it's got a nice orangey yellow color, but it's the clarity is it's pretty much opaque. I mean, it's
Yeah,
I can't see through that at all, really. But it's the
very
color is really nice and orangey.
Yep.
Very fall beer colored.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting my finger over here, and I can't see even
No.
a shadow of my finger. It's extremely
No.
hazy.
Yeah. It's got that sweetness in there. It's got the sweetness, I think, from the sugars and the sweet potato, but it's got an earthy feel to it. I feel like this beer is very earthy, especially with the yams and sweet potatoes.
Oh yeah. You know, I'm definitely getting that candied pecan, that almost
Yes.
like toffee-like flavors.
Mhm.
I think maybe that was some of those aromas that I was
That
picking
could
up.
be too.
I think the brown sugar and like almost toffee-like quality, it really has a lot of that good
Yeah.
candy pecan, peanut brittle type flavor
This is
to it.
this is a very fall beer.
Absolutely.
This is definitely a beer that you would pretty much, I would imagine, only find in autumn time. This is really spectacular, actually.
There's a lot going on with this beer, and as excited as I was to try it for the show, I was also like, oh, there could be a lot that goes wrong with this beer because
Yeah.
there's so many different things coming at it.
Yeah.
But you know what I like is that it handles all those flavors and you get them all pretty strongly, but it's not like you're not overwhelmed with all the flavors that's
Yeah.
in there either.
Well, you mentioned it's a lot of adjuncts.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, you're describing a pretty blank slate beer, but with all of these really interesting additions. So the pecan, the brown sugar, the spices, and the sweet potato, all coming together, and sort of there's a lot of really big flavors there that I think could go wrong, but they don't.
Well, and especially with the beer backbone being so blank. I mean, there's no, there's a Carapils, which is an extremely light caramel malt, Melanoidin, which is kind of like an acidic sort of malt,
Yeah.
flaked barley. Like, there's nothing really. It's such a blank slate. It's a white piece of paper that could have just kind of gotten, let these adjuncts run wild.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost 8% alcohol. So I think the base beer is big enough that even though the flavors are fairly blank in that base, it's heavy enough to stand up to all of these wild flavors that were thrown into it.
Yeah. Really nice and flavorful, but it's not. It doesn't overwhelm you. I'm not overwhelmed.
So for mouthfeel, another nice thing with these, spices and special flavors as well as the strength, I'm impressed by how not like hot it is, and it's only just mildly warming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not getting that like tongue coating like I was before.
Right.
The other
This is
ones.
definitely more in like the medium. It's not a thin beer, but it's not in that medium full range. It does fall off the tongue. It doesn't coat quite as much. And sometimes when you add sugars as adjuncts, that they can actually ferment out more than a malt will.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think that adding sugar to beer would make it a thicker beer because there's more sugars, but actually it ferments so much when you add sugar to beer, it can dry the beer out because
really
the yeast just chews through it and makes a ton of alcohol.
Right.
So,
So you could if you're trying to make a big beer, and a big thick beer, you could end up with a big thin beer.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what a lot of the Belgian beers do, where they are dry, but they can be pretty boozy.
Okay.
Because there's a Belgian candy syrup or Belgian candy sugar, so they add the sugars that boost the alcohol, but it also makes the beer a little bit thinner.
Interesting.
And that can definitely happen with, certainly with the brown sugar. And I think that's what's really interesting is that, the beer is stronger, but with brown sugar as opposed to like a corn sugar or a table sugar, is that the sugar content ferments out, but it leaves that brown sugar flavor behind a little bit, which is really cool.
Yeah, great job platform, I'd say.
Definitely. Very good beer, and I'm sure just an extraordinarily hard beer to do well, and Platform, you did it very well.
I think so. Well, let's see if Dogfish Head can round out our flight.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm super excited to try this beer. This is Costumes and Karaoke. This is a $40 4-pack.
That's insane to me.
Right. So thankfully they let me do a single, which was great because. But anytime I see a beer that's very expensive on the shelves, I'm always like, oh, why is this way? So, I'll get you out of here, platform. We're done with you.
Okay, so Costumes and Karaoke.
Yeah. So this one's really. This is really interesting. It has a really light color to it.
Yeah.
It is an Imperial Cream Ale, so it should be fairly light. Then it had a ton of spices and other adjuncts to it, so I had no idea what this thing was going to look like.
Yeah, very opaque, but I can see my finger through it a little bit.
Yeah, it's not like thick hazy. It's kind of like lightly hazy. I'm getting some of the star anise and vanilla more than and some of the cardamom, which
Yeah.
I think can have almost a sort of a coriander orangey sort of
Sure.
aroma to it. So maybe it's that cardamom that you're getting.
Could be.
Yeah, because actually cardamom could take on some of the citrusy hop aroma, or as we've discussed before, wheat can have like a delicately floral orange sort of
That
flavor
could be
too.
what I'm getting. Yeah.
So I bet it's that cardamom that you're picking up.
Down the hatch.
Yeah. All right. So flavor wise, there is a whole lot going on with this beer.
You were. I'll try that again.
No, that was perfect.
You were talking about the whole star anise, and that was very forward in it on my first sip.
Yeah.
That was all I could taste on the first sip, pretty much.
There is a lot of
There's
that.
a lot.
I'm getting some of the cinnamon too, and it feels to me that it kind of is really drying my mouth out, but it's not a way that like a super well attenuated beer like a crisp lager or a hoppy beer like an IPA would dry out your mouth.
Right.
It feels drying maybe because of these spicy adjuncts.
And it's something that I've been thinking about throughout our series on these beers. There's definitely a specific type of drying that these beers do when they have cinnamon in them. It's I don't know, I don't want to describe it as musty, but it's definitely like a very full dryness. Does that make any sense at all?
No, it does. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not like a really crisp or acidic dryness or a
Right.
bitter dryness. It's drying while these beers can still have a lot of like sweet flavors. So it's just and they're not astringent either, because you can have an astringent dryness.
Oh, absolutely.
You can have a low pH dryness like in a sour beer or something, and you can have a hoppy drying sort of quality where it's just drying because of the bitter hop content. And you're absolutely right. This is a different category of drying.
Yeah. Well, it's like a spice dryness. It's
That's
right. It's like the cinnamon challenge.
Yeah.
We've talked about that on the show once, I think. But yeah, it's like a spice dryness. It's like the dryness from spices. Like you took a mouthful of cinnamon.
That'll dry your mouth
out real quick.
Yeah.
That's the exact same. It's taking me back to a place.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I get definitely more of that dryness from the cinnamon. I think the vanilla is... between the vanilla and the oats are lending kind of a rounded smoothness to it, and it might be a little bit harsh otherwise. Definitely more of the star anise in the flavor.
You get a lot of that. If you
and
like black licorice, this is probably one of the beers for you. I don't want to say the beer, but...
Yeah, it has some in it, but also it's not... if somebody said to me, hey, Aaron, I want your thoughts on my black licorice beer, I'd probably be like, no thanks. But, this beer has it in it, and it is definitely at the forefront, but it's not so much that I can't enjoy the beer.
When I wasn't, my initial sip, you heard my reaction. It, punched me. Whoa, hello, star anise.
Yeah.
It's gotten better since I'm the same way with you. I avoid, Black Crows. I get get rid of the black licorice, jelly beans, or just avoid black licorice in general. But it's not that.
Right.
It's there. Yeah.
Right.
It's just
much more, and I think it would be pushed over the edge.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very present, especially in the flavor.
Yeah, anymore, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really a roller coaster ride of a beer, but it takes you through all of the declared flavors. It starts with the cardamom and vanilla, and then you kind of take a sip, and then it's like, oh, I'm out of that tunnel, and I'm into, cinnamon and anise land, which is really pretty cool when the flavors can take you through that journey like that as you enjoy the beer through all the phases, from aroma, the first sip, holding it on your tongue, then you swallow it, the finish, and the aftertaste. It really takes you through a whole ride of all those flavors.
Absolutely. It's very good smelling beer. I mean, it's like you said, you don't get any of the anise on the nose at all. There's zero, as far as I can tell, but it definitely does present itself later on in the beer.
So if it was more harmonious throughout, you think you would increase?
I think I would maybe increase it more if it were a little bit. Yeah,
I could see that. So you said like a 7 or 8,
something like that.
I think I'm with you in there.
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, go with that. We can let's call it an 8.
Yeah.
For the aroma. Appearance, I think, is just fine at a 3. It's only worth 3 points.
Yeah.
And
it's a good looking beer. I like how it cleared up.
I do too.
That was really interesting to me.
What about flavor? This is such a hard one to categorize in such a bombastic, flavored beer like this.
And it's like you said, like the roller coaster ride, because that first sip, ooh, that was all anise.
Yeah.
But as I sipped it more, I got the cinnamon more, I got the vanilla more, and it really, all of that came through. I like this beer, actually. I mean, for as much as I hate black licorice or anything like that, I like the beer. It's pretty good. I mean, I maybe would rate this at maybe a 13, 14.
I think this is a beer that you really, as we are doing, really try to spend some time with it, dissect it, enjoy it for everything that it's presenting you. This is not a beer that you should sip and be doing something else while you kind of just have this beer. This is a beer that is, as I mentioned, it's kind of an expensive beer. It's a beer that's meant to be the center of attention, and you should be thoughtful and be present when tasting this beer to accept everything that it's offering you.
Yeah. And I don't even know if you really can drink this beer offhandedly because of how much, at least for me, if I were doing something else and I took a sip, I'd be like, hello, you are now the center of my attention.
Yeah.
You have my full and undivided attention now, costumes and karaoke.
I'd probably give it somewhere in maybe the 14, 15 range in flavor.
Yeah. It's not a bad beer. I like this beer. I mean, I could see coming back to it. I could see coming back to it. I mean, it might not be something that I make a point of, but
I think we have not really talked about the base beer very much at all, and really that's just a delivery system for all those other unique flavors.
Right.
Which is that some of that is to be expected, but I would like to see a little bit more balance. We've been talking about the complexity of all these additional flavors in this beer. We haven't talked at all about how harmonious they are with the base Imperial Cream Ale. And I think that's definitely a reason to knock it. A beer should be well in balance. Even if we do like all the adjunct flavors, it needs to live side by side with the beer that it's being delivered to you in.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe this beer could do well with some aging. Sometimes higher gravity, really intense beers can do really well aged a year or two.
Yeah.
You might lose some of that delicateness. Some of that cardamom sort of oranginess might fade out after that period of time. But some of the base beer might come forward more.
Sure.
I'd probably score it maybe a 14 for flavor.
Sure. Yeah, it's very out there in terms of flavor.
Yeah.
Very bombastic, as you said.
All right, mouthfeel. We got 5 points. We're going to comment on body, carbonation, warmth, creaminess, and other palate sensations.
I would definitely more on the creamy side.
Yeah.
Especially, I just killed my taster. Definitely on the creamier side.
Well, it is a cream ale.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be on the creamy side. I would hope so for a cream ale.
It is, yeah, and you know, contrast that versus the other 2 beers we had in the flight. The first one, medium full. It wasn't that creaminess, but it had like a tongue coating viscosity.
Yes.
The second beer was a bit thinner and drier, probably due to the brown sugar.
Probably.
And this one, you're right, it does have just a creaminess, a softness kind of throughout. So yeah, very astute calling it a creamy beer. I think, you know, now that I've had my whole glass, about 4 or 5 ounces of it, I think it is a bit warming.
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of medium low carbonation. It's definitely not highly carb beer, but
not
it's
at
not
all.
flat either. So
Yeah.
I'd probably call it medium low carb, medium warming, medium high creaminess.
Yeah.
Nothing super extreme. It's kind of in that safe zone where it's maybe a little bit higher on the creaminess, a little bit lower on the carbonation,
Yeah.
things like that. Nothing super stands out there. I'd probably give it like 4 out of 5.
That's probably good.
Yeah. All right, an overall impression for this incredibly unique and distinct beer.
Yeah.
Out of 10, just what is your overall kind of impression on that?
I mean, I think my knee jerk is a 6. Just knee jerk kind of reaction. There's a lot here to like. They really, I mean, I think they, with the star anise being really at the forefront, I think they did really well with it. They could have overpowered it. They could have made this a black licorice beer, and I could have been out. I just could have been done. They didn't do that though. The flavors all play really nicely. You know, I liked it getting clearer as the time went on. You know, the aroma sort of mellowing out as we got in. Just really good beer. I mean, it's a 6 from me, I think.
Yeah, no, I think I can agree with that. And thinking of it from a beer judge standpoint, beer judges usually have, say, a flight of 5 beers in front of them, and thinking about this beer's place in the realm of 30B, like an autumn spice beer specifically.
Right.
In the realm of all like consumer beers, and especially like really intense flavored consumer beers, I think it's a great choice, a really cool, unique, different thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of barrel-aged imperial stouts out there. There's a lot of like the triple IPAs if you're going for like the highly flavored, kind of really wild, intense beers. This is a really cool kind of detour from the strong and really powerfully flavored beers.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that Dogfish took the time to make such a unique beer. That being said, here's the but, right?
Yeah.
Standing up in a flight against other beers in the autumn spiced seasonal beer category, I think it falls short of like some of those really good, genuine like pumpkin pie flavors,
Right.
with the traditional like nutmeg, pumpkin type dessert,
Yeah.
or other type flavors. Pecan Yammy was really cool and super like evocative of that pumpkin, like
Very
Thanksgiving
fall.
dessert.
Yeah, very
Right.
fall beer.
Right.
They did something interesting with this one. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Definitely interesting.
Well, and
Unconventional.
they might not have ever intended it to be, judged as a
Hard to say.
a fall seasonal beer, but that's how we're judging it. So, kind of looking at it through that filter, I
Yeah.
could definitely see giving it kind of like a, maybe a 5 or 6 for an impression.
Sure.
So, I think you said 6, so we can kind of mark that. So we're at let's see, 10, 24, 27, 35. 35, and I think that's probably right about right. Like,
Yeah.
maybe like not quite where the Candied Yammy was. I think we enjoyed that a little bit
Oh, yeah.
more, but really a 35 is not
It's not a bad
score at all. So so 35 overall, but really Such a cool, unique beer.
Very cool beer.
Well, any parting thoughts for the flight or for our viewers?
Well, I mean, if we're gonna order them in terms of best or most enjoyed to least enjoyed, for me it's got to be that Yammy. That was actually it was really surprising. Like I really liked it. Very, we're right in the middle of the fall season. We're right in the middle of fall, although the weather outside kind of doesn't really, a little colder, but very fall evocative. I liked it a lot. I mean, I really like the Ignis Fatuus. Really great pumpkin minus pumpkin beer.
Yeah.
So funny. This is not a bad beer at all. I mean, one beer had to be the worst in the flight, but it just happened to be this. But decent beer. I liked it. I liked the experiment. But yeah, it's kind of my ordering.
I think our winner of the flight is Platform.
All right, Platform.
Candied Pecan Yammy.
Yeah. I'm interested to try the other Yammys.
Definitely. All right, well, that's it for our show today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please check out our full range of autumn seasonal beers. We have a whole playlist, and we also have Oktoberfest beers as well as a ton of other content. So check us out and come back for more Taste for Adventure.